You are live, Your Worship.
In honor of Miss Floyd's grade 4 class, we are now court in session, I think was their words. So, Council, I'd like to call this regular council meeting of June 27, 2023 to order with adoption of the agenda. Someone want to make that motion? Councilor Cherry, second by Councilor Devlin. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes of the June 13th council meeting, regular council meeting. Someone want to make that motion? Councilor Devlin, seconded by Councilor Stapenhurst. All in favor? Motion's carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, I am going to go right on to number 5, our annual report. And so, Ms. Floyd, do we have any presentation with that before we ask for the
We do not, Your Worship. We actually only received one comment on the annual report, but I printed it because it's quite positive. My compliments to all involved in preparing the annual report 2022. I enjoyed the format and found it to be an engaging and easy to read. Your city, your staff, note of appreciation to all city staff, an opportunity to get to know some of the awesome people who work for the city and for our community was a highlight for me.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Appreciate hearing those good things. And it is a great report. Glad to see it. So if I can get a member of council to put this motion on the table for me to adopt, please. Councilor Cherry.
I move that the 2022 annual report be adopted.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Devlin. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to announcements from the mayor. So we are coming up to Canada Day on Saturday, starting with a pancake breakfast, I believe, at the Legion. And then moving on to our parade and then Canada Day festivities in Queen Elizabeth Park. Just encourage the community to come out and enjoy the day. Great to have the community out doing that. I understand that there is going to be a dunk tank. Originally thought that people would be dunking me, and that won't be the case this year. So it'll be up to some of council who shows up to go into the dunk tank if they're up to it. And Councilor Cherry, are you going to be back in time to sit in the seat?
I unfortunately will not be able to make it. I do apologize.
So next year, you're on. You get to do it. Anyway, just encourage people to come out for the day. It's going to be a wonderful day. And then on July 4th, the RCMP musical ride is here in town. 2 presentations of the ride, one at 2, one at 6. And that's over in the riding arena at Selkirk Saddle Club. Just encourage people to come out for that. Donations to that is to the food bank. So it's free, but if you want to make a contribution to the food bank, bring a food stuff for that, they can always use that. And my understanding is that there's no room for parking at the Saddle Club. So we're going to have a shuttle. Is that correct, Ms. Donato?
Yes, Your Worship. There'll be designated pickup spots and shuttle service into the event. And we also encourage walking or biking. There will be 2 bike corrals on site. So there'll be areas for people to park their bike.
Perfect. So we got horse corrals and bike corrals. So we're set. Awesome. So I just encourage the community to come out to that event as well. All right, we're going to move on to item 9, bylaws, fees and charges amendment, bylaw 2354, and that's to be adopted. So someone want to put that motion on the table and then we can discuss it. Councilor Devlin.
Move the fees and charges amendment bylaw number 2354 be adopted.
Is there a seconder for that motion, please? Councilor Lucel. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 9B, Reserve Fund Establishment Bylaw Growing Communities Reserve Fund. Someone want to put that motion on the table and then we can talk about it. Councillor Devlin.
I move that the Growing Communities Reserve Fund bylaw number 2361 be read first, second, and third time.
Second for the motion, please. Councillor Lusau. Any discussion on this motion? Any comment from finance? Ms. Moore?
Through your worship, no comments from me really. This reserve is required by the province who has given this grant money to us for 3.3 million. It is a requirement of the grant.
Thank you. Councillor Stapheners, do you have a comment or a question?
I had a question in regards to the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. Where are these funds coming from?
Ms. Moore?
What- Yeah.
Through your worship, they would be funded through potential developer contributions. They could potentially be funded through taxation, grants, or other various items. I believe Mr. Simon had them listed in his affordable housing policy. However, it's not quite determined exactly how it's going to get funded. There are just different options on how to fund it. So nothing is set in stone. It's coming in tandem with affordable housing policy that recommends that we should have a reserve to isolate funds towards housing.
Great, thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
If I may, just to follow up, I think it's worthwhile exploring a little bit more as to what exactly we're approving here, for lack of a better term. I do have some concerns. Looking in the packet for this meeting, it looks like we've already contributed $250,000 towards the Revelstoke Housing Society. We've also donated $100,000 as a donation earlier this year. So really, what my question is, when it all comes together, what exactly are we funding? How much are we funding? Where are the funds going to? Where are they coming from? It'd be nice to see some kind of a plan moving forward as to what exactly this entails. Because to me, it's kind of putting the cart before the horse, if you ask me.
Well, as Ms. Moore has just said, it's legislated by government that we have this fund so that we can make sure that we know where the funds are. And Ms. Moore, you've got your hand up. Do you care to comment?
Through your worship, I want to just clarify that we jumped forward to the Affordable Housing Reserve, where I think the original motion was on the Growing Communities, which is legislated or required by the province for the $3.3 million grant for growing communities, which is related to infrastructure projects. As for the Affordable Housing Reserve, it is listed in the reserve bylaw of potential options for funding. And I'm not sure if Mr. Simon is in the room. However, the affordable housing policy is meant to help guide council and staff on how to move forward with dispersing grants and funding the Housing Society or other organizations that are looking to proceed with projects.
Mr. Simon, do you have comment? I know that this motion that's on the table is related to the $3.3 million that we need to have a reserve fund for the growing communities. But Mr. Simon, comment.
Through your worship, with respect to the Affordable Housing Reserve, which would be separate from the Growing Communities Reserve, the Affordable Housing Reserve is intended to be an avenue for council to be able to distribute funds to different projects within the community upon application. As per the policy that was presented to council in April, that will be coming back for consideration should this bylaw be adopted. We need to have an Affordable Housing Reserve specifically set up so that when someone wants to come in and say, can the city support financially with the project that we're doing to support affordable housing within the community, then we have funds that are dedicated for it. The avenues by which we can build this up will be at the discretion of council. So council could ultimately opt to decide to divert a portion of tax revenue to the Affordable Housing Reserve through different developer fees We also can make contributions to the Affordable Housing Reserve. So going through a rezoning process, perhaps instead of entering into a housing agreement for affordable housing, you make a cash contribution to our Affordable Housing Reserve. So there's different avenues by which this Affordable Housing Reserve would ultimately be built up. But the first step is to get the reserve established so that we can start building it up and start adding in other policies to fund this reserve.
All right, thank you for that comment. So I'm going to go back to the motion on the table, Growing Communities Reserve Fund bylaw number 2361. We read it first, second, and third time. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Councillor Orlando.
Your Worship, yes, thank you. My question is regarding decision-making process for the allocation of the Growing Communities, the $3.3 million fund. I understand that what we're doing now is creating a fund to house where this money will go. But I'm inquiring about what the process will be for decisions on where it is allocated to.
Mr. Simon, do you have comment on that, or Ms. Moore? Ms. Moore, you have your hand up.
Through your worship and in response to Councillor Orlando, I plan to bring forward a report to the Finance Committee at the end of July that will outline a few key projects that could be funded through the Growing Communities grant received by the province. And at that time, if the committee wishes to, they could make a motion to council to approve spending towards a specific project to then feed the 2024 budget cycle. So that would be the next step. The funds currently have not been formally allocated to a specific project.
That answer your question, Councillor?
Yes, Your Worship, I do have a follow-up, and that is for staff, I guess, through the chair, is that have any been allocated so far? Any of this fund been allocated so far?
Ms. Moore?
Through your worship, no, none of the funds have been allocated so far. The report that will come forward to the Finance Committee will be to allocate or consider allocating the full amount, as nothing has been committed thus far.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, any further discussion on the Growing Communities Reserve Fund? Councillor Orlando.
Just for clarification, we're just doing point number one, Growing Communities.
That's
We're not
correct.
doing the other two. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to call the question on point number one, Growing Communities Reserve Fund. All those in favor? Opposed? Note, motion's carried. Moving on to item number two. Does someone want to put that motion on the table? Councillor Devlin.
Move that the Arena Redevelopment Project Capital Reserve Fund bylaw number 2360 be read first, second, and third time.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Lusal. Discussion on that motion. Councillor Cherry, you have a comment or question?
No, so Your Worship, I think my my hand's going up a little bit delayed here.
All right, thank you. Ms. Moore, comment about this reserve fund?
Through your worship, my only comment is this is the reserve that we've all been talking about in terms of segregating out money to set aside for the arena, and the taxation impact from 2023 budget cycle to allocate specific tax increase to the arena will be allocated to this reserve fund. So this is being brought forward for first three readings.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from council regarding this reserve fund? Seeing none, I will call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Item number three, the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. Someone want to put that motion on the table? Councillor Orlando.
Yes, Your Worship, I move that the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund bylaw number 2359 be read first, second, and third time.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Devlin. Discussion on the motion. Anyone want to weigh in? Councillor Orlando.
Yeah, Your Worship. So this is, for people watching, this is an Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. So essentially, we're creating a place to put funding that is coming from various sources into a reserve to fund future affordable housing initiatives. So that's the basics of it. I'm going to also ask a question, if that's okay, Your Worship,
Yes.
For clarification and communication. from staff, and my question is focused on the wording of it as an affordable housing reserve fund, and specifically the percentage allocation mentioned within the fund regarding thresholds. I know through, we had a great working meeting yesterday with about 20 stakeholders on future planning for the Housing Action Fund federal grant application. And my question is this, affordable housing definition in this reserve fund limits us to a maximum of 30% of housing income. And my question is this something that's required by various funders or advisable, or is this just any staff feel this might be limiting in a limiting definition, and that in the future we cannot pull from the fund for a project that does not meet that specific criteria? So yeah, just a general question. Okay, through the chair.
Ms. Moore, any comment?
Through your worship, I hope you don't mind. I'll pass this over to Mr. Simon, as I think he could answer it better than me.
All right, Mr. Simon.
For your worship, Councilor Orlando, so the way that the definition has been crafted in here is intended to provide a bit of flexibility at council's discretion. So generally speaking, when we're talking affordable housing, which as we discussed yesterday, has a lot of different ideas behind it about what that actually means. But the general idea is that no more than 30% of your income is going to be spent on housing. Mm-hmm. So that's reflected in the definition, and we would be also looking at CMHC data to start establishing what that actually looks like. It could be rent geared to income, or no more than 30% of your income is spent on it as well, based on numbers other than those identified in CMHC. Mm-hmm. Or lastly, it could be at a rate deemed acceptable to the city of Revelstoke. So that last one is really key, where it gives flexibility. If we have a good project coming forward, mm-hmm. and maybe it's not meeting that 30% threshold, but council still wants to get behind it, there is nothing that would negate the ability for council to do that based on this flexible definition.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Any other comments on the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund? Seeing none, I will call a question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. I'm just going to make a public statement now. Councillor Cherry has just informed me that his camera may go on and off because he is unstable internet where he is at. So people see that he's still up and on, even though you don't see his picture, he's still in the room. So thank you for that, Councillor Cherry. All right, moving on to 11A, Finance Update, Reserve Funds and Surpluses Policy. Someone want to put that motion on the table for me, please? Councillor Devlin.
Move that the updated reserve funds and surpluses policy be approved and effective upon adoption of the Growing Communities Reserve Fund, the Arena Development Project Capital Reserve Fund, and the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund bylaws.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Roussel. Discussion on that motion. Any comment, Ms. Moore?
Your worship, sorry, something popped up on my screen and I couldn't unmute. My only comment for this is that as we're going through and adopting 3 new reserves, this policy governs the reserves of the city of Revelstoke. So it has been updated to include the 3 new reserves, and the minimum and optimal balances of reserves have been updated based off of inflationary rates and current capital projects in the 15-year long-term financial plan. And that's the reason why it's coming forward. So it's basically housekeeping. It hasn't been updated in several years. And so we figured we'd update the minimal amounts for inflationary purposes as well.
Great, thank you for that. Any other comments or questions from council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 11B, the Sophie statement. Someone want to put that motion on the table for me, please? Councilor Lussan.
Thank you, Mayor Schultz. I move that the 2022 Statement of Financial Information be approved and that the Mayor and Director of Finance be authorized to execute the same on behalf of the city.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Devlin. Any discussion on the Statement of Financial Information? Councilor Palmer?
Thank you, Mayor Souls. I'd just like to make a point which I've done before on the remuneration of employees. It continues to be my belief that this is inappropriate under privacy legislation, although it's the practice and the direction of the province to do this. I think it's something that maybe we should consider lobbying the province to be changing this practice, which will eventually be including every employee and publicly stating what their wages are. I think it's very, very inappropriate. And again, mentioning the original intent behind this was for the executive officers, specifically the CAO in the past.
Right.
And so I continue to be kind of appalled for releasing personal information of this nature.
Great. Thank you for your comment. It's well noted. Any other comments on the statement of information, financial information? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. All right, moving on to item 11C, Powerhouse Road Park Concept Plan Final Report. Someone want to put the motion on the table for me, please? Councillor Devlin?
I move that the Powerhouse Road Park Concept Plan Final Report dated June 12th, 2023 be approved.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Lusal. Ms. Donato, I'll let you do your presentation. Whenever you're ready. There we go.
Okay.
We're up.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. So just a quick presentation for you. I'll just quickly highlight the background, a little bit of an overview on the consultation process, some of the guiding principles we used when developing the plan, the final concept plan, and then the next steps. So most of you might recall that this development of the Powerhouse Road site was a high priority recommendation through the Parks and Rec Master Plan that we did in 2021. And the consultation process involved city departments, individual stakeholders, a group stakeholder meeting, further discussion with a couple of the user groups where we had to go back and forth due to some logistics. Then we took the plan back to city departments for final review and comment. Some of the guiding principles that we used were providing a sense of community, incorporating food security at the site, supporting diverse and accessible recreation, natural area conservation, and access to nature in city parks, connecting the parks and trails to the community, and resilient infrastructure. So in front of you, you'll have the concept plan. I think I used an old PowerPoint, sorry. It should say final concept plan, not draft.
That's all right.
But some of the highlights in the plan are formalizing the park entrance by including destination signage as well as regulatory signage. I don't know, you'll see the little blue area, the little blue bubble, that's formalizing the park entrance. We have formalizing the disc golf course area, so that's that light blue area. Part of that formalization includes a redesign of the disc golf course. So I'm working with the society on that right now. Also includes incorporating some seating nodes and some garbage receptacles in that area. Then we have the off-leash dog park. So on the site plan, you'll see that it's indicated off-leash dog park / search and rescue. So determining on what happens with search and rescue, and if they continue to have interest in that land, will determine whether or not we do a dog park at that site. There is some indication that they may no longer have an interest in this land and they're pursuing other interests. So we're just kind of waiting on a finalization on that. With the off-leash dog park, one thing we did hear from the community was the value of the off-leash dog walking area. So there was a lot of support to keep that off-leash walking area in place. So we do recommend that the entire walking loop remain off-leash, even though we are creating a designated off-leash park space. The food production gardens, which is the green rectangle, We've been working with the LFI on that site, so at this time, they haven't determined the full suitability of the site for that reason. But they are working with the Ministry of Agriculture's regional archaeologists to determine how they would go about ensuring that that site is safe and appropriate for food production. Water access for the paddle sports. So we've been actively working with the Revelstoke Paddle Association on determining what those access points would look like and the different approvals required for that process. So we've had a few meetings on that. The boxing club, the intent would be to keep the boxing club at that current location for now. They don't have a long-term vision for relocating or growing their membership at this time. I will note that the building is nearing the end of its life cycle, so in the future, we'll be considering next steps for that building and what that would mean for the boxing club. And then general park amenities throughout the site would include bike racks, benches, waste recycle bins, and more interpretive signage. And then future consideration for designated parking areas and washroom facilities. And next steps. So the build out of the amenities are going to be phased, and we'll continue to work with user groups as they are ready to advance their projects forward. And then any type of financial impact to the city will be brought forward through budget deliberations. And that's pretty much it.
Well,
So happy to answer any questions.
any comments, questions, council?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. Just a question to Ms. Donato. The washroom you say is a phased inclusion in this development plan that's going to come after other things are already in place, or is that something that's top priority for this plan?
Yeah, so at this stage, it's not top priority. It will be phased into the development as the uses expand, and it'll be subject to budget considerations as well.
And when you're talking about the OCP plan and goals of resilient infrastructure, is this going to be a 4 seasons washroom? Or is this just going to be a 3 seasons washroom like other ones in other parks around the community?
We have not fleshed out those details yet.
Okay.
And that would be subject to budget as well.
Yeah. One last question. Dealing with the paddle association, is there going to be an area to rinse boats off with the water hookups there, or has that been considered?
Yes, that has been considered, and that has been identified with their use where their watercraft storage is, adjacent to where the food production gardens would also have some type of storage shed adjacent to the washroom building. So we're trying to tie that all into the same space, just to more efficient for services.
Okay.
Yeah, so that definitely has been considered.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Donato, Councilor Romano?
Your worship, yeah, I just wanted to follow up, and there was information in the report, but just sort of verbally on timeline for implementation. My one question that arose as a result of your presentation was regarding the dog park and potential delays for that. And so I'm seeking, number one, just a bit more understanding of what's happening, what the timeline is. But for all of the different phased elements, what is the timeline for implementation for disc golf, et cetera, et cetera?
So we've mapped it out for a 3 to 5 year time frame. However, in particular, like with the Disc Golf Association, we're anticipating that would be completed this summer. So we're currently just working on a redesign of the course. We've already purchased the baskets, working on the sign design. So a lot of that project has already been in motion over the last month in anticipation of this coming forward to council. So we're expecting that one to be done this year, followed by the dog park. And then with the food production gardens, it's just a matter of coordinating with the LFI on their timelines and funding as well. And the same would be with the paddle sports.
Your worship, just a quick follow-up. So this summer, it's likely the dog park will be complete, the fenced dog park will
No, not the dog park, the disc golf course.
Oh, the disc
Sorry,
golf
did I
course.
say dog?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
No,
So,
sorry, my apologies, the disc golf course.
and Your Worship, just regarding design, is there anything to facilitate moving the schedule up for the fenced dog park? And another way of phrasing that question is what's sort of the holdup at this point into getting that one complete?
At this point, there is a lease over the existing site with the search and rescue.
Mhm.
So we cannot do anything until they terminate their lease with the city. And another is staffing capacity.
Okay. Worship, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I'll call a question on approving the concept plan. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nato. Appreciate your report. Moving on to 11D Heritage Alteration Permit. Someone want to put that motion on the table for me, please? Councilor Devlin?
I'll move that heritage alteration permit be issued for a new accessory dwelling unit at 112 6th Street East. Block 45, Section 27, Township 23, Range 2, west of the 6th Meridian, Company District Plan 636B.
Great, thank you. Second for the motion, please. Council Lucille. Any presentation on this, Ms. Colmars?
Unmuted. Yes, Your Worship, I have a presentation if you would like.
Yes,
please let me
please.
know. Okay.
Yeah.
Jaylene, I'm just going to share my screen. You're free to share your screen. Thank you. Everyone in council, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Great. So we're switching gears. This presentation is for a heritage alteration permit. It's a major, that's why council is going to be seeing it today. And it's for an accessory dwelling unit, a carriage house to be located at 112 6th Street East. Little bit of a presentation overview for you. We're going to go over a background, a proposal overview, policy direction and staff evaluation, others consulted, and staff recommendations and council options. So the background, this subject property is existing. It's on a lot that is off a laneway. It has a detached garage and the driveway access is currently based off of Orton. It's located in the central Revelstoke neighborhood and it is in the heritage conservation area. It's a low density and developed with single family dwellings. And the current zoning is R2, single and 2-family residential. As this is a subject new build, a new carriage house to be built on site, a heritage alteration permit is required as per the OCP. But this permit, as it's a substantial build, it's also why it's coming to council as a major heritage alteration permit. So the photo that you see here, that's currently what exists on site at 112 6th Street East. A little bit of the background though about the subject property. According to the Revelstoke Museum and Archives, the home appears to have been built in 1908 and it was built and registered by A.P. Levesque, a local hotelier. In 1926, it transferred ownership to John Alexander Middleton, who was a CP engineer, and his wife Flossie Nettie Middleton. In the mid-1990s, there was a large wraparound covered deck that was added via building permit. And then in 2011, the subject structure saw a substantial building permit as well through a heritage alteration permit for a large rear 2-story addition off the back, which also included a building permit. So my proposal overview, it's all outlined in the report that's been provided to council. However, if you would like, I can go over it line by line, but it is part of the report that was already submitted. So I'm just going to take a moment for you to see the site plan here. The accessory dwelling unit is located off the rear and the driveway is currently existing. The materials that are being proposed for the accessory dwelling unit are materials that resemble in like and character to the existing primary dwelling that's already existing on site. So in context of neighborhood continuity, it's matching currently what is already there. These are the renderings that have been provided. So you can see that the scale and the massing of the subject accessory dwelling unit, and also how it's going to look from a side view in terms of different perspectives of if you were to walk around the building in a form of a 360. This policy direction and staff evaluation is verbatim what is in the report. So I'm not going to read it off the slide here, but some of the main key points here is the setting and the proposed setting of the accessory dwelling unit is what is supported within the Revelstoke Heritage Alteration Conservation Area, as well as one of the key highlights in this, placing the accessory dwelling here allows for the mature trees that are located on site to remain located on site. A little bit more of this policy direction, which is completely found in the staff report. So I'm just going to let it be there, but if you would like me to read through it, I'm able to do so. As part of this, it was taken to the Heritage Commission, Heritage Advisory Commission, and that was done back in April 24th, 2023. The commission had following resolutions that were provided. The agent for the applicant was there. You can see the resolutions up on the slide here. And finally, staff recommend that HAP 2023-002 be deferred for the construction of the accessory dwelling unit, a carriage suite at 112 6th Street East, or any conditions as may be cited by council. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, but I'm here to answer any questions should they arise.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Any comments or questions from council regarding this proposal? I like what I see. I think it's. I know the lot that it's on, and yeah, I think it blends well. Councillor Stapenhurst, you have your hand up. You're muted. Councillor Stapenhurst, you're muted.
Hey, so sorry, Your Worship. My quick question was in regards to the adjoining properties that neighbor this application. I'm just wondering if they've received notification of this application, and if so, what has been the feedback received?
With a heritage alteration permit, it's not 100-meter notification letter is not given to the community, but we haven't received any feedback from the neighbors. As part of this, it's been encouraged for the applicant to discuss it further with their neighbors, just because construction in the heritage conservation area always does perk ears for those who are living and residing in it.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from council? Seeing none.
Mayor Souls, I think that Tim Stapenhurst's hand is up again. Councillor Stapenhurst.
Councillor Stapenhurst, do you have another comment or question?
No, I don't. I'm just working with his iPad, sir. Thank you, though.
All right, thank you. Thanks for your honesty with that. Councillor Orlando.
Your Worship, a question of staff through the chair, and it's a follow-up on what Councillor Stapenhurst just asked. The applicant is encouraged to notify the neighbors about the changes. I'm just wondering if there is a requirement or an indication that that has happened here. And the focus of my question is after the fact, some neighbors just didn't know and find out after it's been approved and then have something to say. So I'm just wondering what the maybe not so much about this particular application, but just more about the process in general.
Ms. Comas?
Yeah, well, this is the first major heritage alteration permit that council's seen in many, many years. So definitely new to this council, but also probably new to the previous council as well. It's a little bit like a building permit is still required. Just this is the first stage for it to go to building permit stage. It's not required to have a 100-meter notification letter like you would find within a development variance permit. It did go to the Heritage Conservation Area Committee, I should say, sorry about that. And they did have their feedback to be provided on the report, but in general, it hasn't been seen widespread by the 100-meter notification that you would see with a development variance permit. Again, we do encourage our not our tenants, we do encourage our applicants to speak to their neighbors, because neighborly relations are something that we're always trying to take into consideration when we are recommending approval of an application.
Appreciate that. Any other comments or questions from council? Councilor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship. To my fellow councillors, I think this is going to be the first of many of these heritage alteration permits we see. Now that they are allowed to have carriage suites on their property. I think us as council, we need to figure out how we want to do this. I personally believe that we are in a housing crisis, and adding extra units is a great way to do it, to try to mitigate some of these issues. I think that this developer has gone above and beyond their minimum requirements in trying to build a carriage suite within the constructs that they have to deal with in the heritage area. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councilor Cherry, you're in favor? Yes, all right, thank you. This motion has passed. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 11E, manufactured home park redevelopment protection policy. Mr. Simon, do you have opening statement or presentation?
Through your worship, all of council, no formal presentation today, but I can just give a bit of a recap how we kind of got to where we are. So this item was previously presented to Committee of the Whole on June 15th. Committee of the Whole ultimately directed that it come to council for consideration. Few things about this policy to really keep in mind. The philosophy of this policy is to protect the vulnerable tenants that otherwise would not have any protections under current city policy. This policy is not intended to incentivize the redevelopment of the mobile home park, but rather intended to provide a process and an overview should someone wish to redevelop a mobile home park. That would ensure tenants are notified of the development plans. Tenants are notified of resources that are available within the community to help them transition should they be leaving the mobile home park, and that they're notified and aware of what their rights are under the Manufactured Home Park Tenancy Act and the Residential Tenancy Act. This policy is intended to ensure that as a community, those that are most vulnerable, that are most subject to displacement, are aware when an application comes forward that they could potentially be displaced. It's intended to try and find an avenue for those individuals to get into the housing market within Revelstoke that does not result in them being displaced and ultimately having to leave the community because there's no other affordable options for them. So it's really important to keep in mind that this policy is non-statutory. Council can apply it as they see fit. It gives guidance for staff and applicants, whereas right now we have zero guidance. So if we have an application come forward tomorrow to redevelop a mobile home park, and the city says to the owner, we want you to notify all of your tenants, and the owner says, where does it say in your bylaws and policies that I have to do that? That will be a challenging conversation for staff to have because we won't have anything to actually leverage that happening. When they say to us, do I need to provide any affordable housing? The only policy that we would be relying upon is a policy in the OCP that is very broad, that is intended to guide subsequent bylaw and policy development, rather than be used to necessarily evaluate and provide recommendations on a particular development application. So this policy is very important that it builds upon the direction of the OCP, the Housing Action Plan. It's important to remember that it's non-statutory. We have a developer come to the table who's coloring outside the lines a little bit of the policy, so to speak, and council thinks that it's a great application that has merit to it, but it may not comply with one or two items within the policy. Council still has the ability to say, you know what, we understand what our policy is, but this is a good application. We want it to move forward regardless of what the policy says. So a few of those things to keep in mind as council is deliberating what to do with this policy. And if you have any questions, certainly happy to help answer and provide some clarification. I do apologize. I think that there was one email from a council member that came in advance of the meeting that I wasn't able to respond to in time. So definitely happy to answer it in the midst of the meeting today.
So council, any questions for Mr. Simon regarding this? I think, Councilor Palmer, do you remember this was a request of previous council that we asked some sort of protection to be brought forward regarding that might have even been before the by-election. I thought we had talked about this in
Yeah,
the previous council.
It's a topic that's come up, I think, whenever there's a mobile home park. It's sold or whatever, I think it's over the years, yes.
Good, all right, thank you for that. I think this is a great way of protecting our tenants, and we've been asked by some of our tenants who have been ousted from their mobile homes, their rental facilities in mobile home parks because of proposed planning. So I think staff have come up with a good proposal. Councilor Orlando, did you have your hand up? Did you?
Yeah, Your Worship. I think I'm the person referred to, the councillor referred to who had questions earlier, and I'm happy to pose them now. So just to preface my questions, having a mobile home protection policy was something I advocated for personally here at the table during the strategic planning process, and again earlier this year, advocating that it be moved up the list and expedited because I feel it's really important. And so philosophically, yes, I support steps to add additional protections and make sure that the City of Revelstoke's policy, which is in addition to basically two overarching provincial policies that contain protection and rules for redevelopment provincially are there. But my concern is this, and that's at the Committee of the Whole, I presented a motion which was ultimately defeated in a 4-3 vote to consult with the current owners of mobile home parks by providing them some ability to input before this policy is passed. And also a really key thing, and this was Councillor Cherry was advocating for this, is to consult with mortgage lenders about the implications of this. And specifically what I'm looking at is an unintended consequence of this policy, which allows for stratification similar to Johnson Heights for the 19 existing mobile home parks, which represent 13% of households in Revelstoke. And that I'm concerned that implementation of this policy could have an unintended consequence of provoking or prompting more developments, and that people will not be able to get mortgages. So this was a couple weeks ago, just wanting to check into that. So I'm not going to support it today. Not that I don't support having this policy in place, but without consultation, I think it's a big mistake for council, because we don't know what the unintended consequences will be. If we had the ability to refer it to people like Revelstoke Community Housing Society, Community Connections, which has housing advocacy groups, the owners themselves, who are currently own mobile or manufactured homes, then they might have some tweaks, some other suggestions. Perhaps we would know more about the implications of people being able to get mortgages to be able to see this through. So I guess not really a question, more of a statement to everyone in that unless, bottom line for me, unless there's consultation with mortgage lenders, as well as allowing opportunity for some advocates, maybe even a scaled down one, that I just can't support it because there are unknown, unintended consequences I feel we could face. So, thank you.
All right. Any other comments from council? Councillor Devlin?
Yeah, thank you through your worship. I just want to make some comments, maybe in counter to Councillor Orlando's comments, I suppose, though not directly addressing them. I'm very much in support of this. I think it is a city policy. It is a policy that our staff would be encouraged to follow then in the case of people redeveloping. Maybe I'm being short-sighted in this, maybe it's my lack of experience, but I don't see how having a policy for when somebody comes up with a zoning or redevelopment application, having a policy in place would encourage them to do that more often. I don't really understand that. I also don't really understand the concept of talking to mortgage brokers, because a mortgage broker is going to take each person who would be applying for a mortgage and weigh that, as mortgage brokers have done since time immemorial. It's based on their own credit, it's based on their own debt. It isn't based on overarching city policies that say, you could apply for a mortgage if we stratify, because that's going to be what happens if a mobile home park stratifies without a policy. It's going to be exactly the same conversation with exactly the same mortgage lenders, as I believe only the credit union does mortgages for mobile homes anyway. So I think I don't really share the same concerns. I don't really understand how having a city policy in play that our staff would follow, that is non-binding, would encourage any of these conversations. So that's just my comment.
Okay, appreciate that. Councillor Staples, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, excuse me, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say that when this initially came to committee of the whole, I voted against this because of the reason of seeking the independent advice of a mortgage broker or finance. There's too many variables when we're looking at individuals coming for lending for homes. I also feel like the real estate market right now is a pretty volatile market. Interest rates are constantly changing, and just because you get advice on Monday doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same advice or the same terms and conditions the following Monday. So that's why I'm not in favor, or that's why I didn't vote in favor of it at committee of the whole. And then in terms of this policy, I don't think this policy is perfect, but I do think it's a policy that we can implement today, and that we can start watching and tweaking for changes over time. So that's my comment. Thank you, Your Worship.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? So Councillor Palmer, then Councillor Orlando, and then I'm going to win.
So I have a question. Do we have a motion on the table or not? I'm prepared to put a motion on the table, but I do have a question. It seems to me that there's four motions here that seem to be interrelated.
They are.
And dependent. So unless advised otherwise, I would be prepared to put all four of those motions on the table as they stand. So that'd be number one.
So, Your Worship, I think that's possible. You may want to do two motions, the rescinding of the three and that. Just because if you're going to make any changes to the policy that's being approved.
Interesting. So, Mayor Sol, so the reason why I ask it, I wonder about rescinding those policies, and then the debate on policy DS-24, because it seems to me that they should all be tied together.
I see where you're going with that.
Yeah, because otherwise, if we rescind 3, then the real controversy is on number 4.
Okay. Mr. Simon, comment.
To Your Worship, perhaps resolution number 4 could be considered first, and then depending on the outcome of resolution number 4, then the following 3 for rescinding could be approved if that's acceptable to the corporate officer.
Seems reasonable. Okay, so Mayor Solis, I'll put a motion on the table that council policy DS-24, manufactured home park redevelopment, residential tenant protection, strata conversion policy be approved.
Seconder for the motion, Councillor Devlin.
And I'll speak to the motion.
Go ahead, please.
I'm in support of the motion, and I'm not going to go through all the discussion that's been to this point, but it is the policy is really gives a little bit more clarity as to mobile home parks of the future of that. And it's we're trying to, when we talk about whether it's mortgages or how ownership or tenancy, we're really outside of the realm of local government. And so we're doing the best we can with this policy to address that and provide some guidance. So based on that, I'm supportive of the policy and recognizing that because it's a policy and not a bylaw, it can be adjusted very easily by this council or future councils.
Okay. Councillor Orlando, do you have comment on the motion on the table? In addition to what you've already said.
Yeah, Your Worship, I guess just for clarity, my comments and also to address some of the concern or some of the issues brought up by Councillor Devlin, just put it as simply as possible. Currently, if you want to redevelop a manufactured home park, you're going to be proposing something that conforms with existing development bylaws. This policy that we're introducing will theoretically still allow for that, but we'll also add a new option, which is to stratify existing parks, existing manufactured home parks. So unconventional zoning, maybe thinner, smaller properties, that kind of stuff. And specifically dwelling units that are not with basements and fixed dwelling units. So my concern about the mortgage question and financing question comes there, and that will a lender be available to lend to that kind of a property? So will they want to, if a manufactured home park owner says, okay, where you can buy your lot now, will somebody lend to them? What will be the requirements of the lending? And ultimately, I'm concerned that it will prompt more redevelopments and that people will be caught out in the sense that they will suddenly not be able to attain a mortgage and not be able to keep their home. I don't know. If we had consulted and had that information, I feel much better. I made a motion to that effect to the committee of the whole. It was not supported. And as a result, I just can't support this because of unknown consequences, potential consequences.
Okay, all right, appreciate the comments. I'm going to support this. I look at some of the things that we put in. If we don't put this through now, I think we've missed an opportunity to protect the people in our community. I firmly believe that in the past, we may have missed opportunities for that. So we've asked for this, staff have gone out of their way to bring that forward. I like the part that it basically says that we must notify the tenants 2 weeks prior to any redevelopment potential going to city planning, so it gives the opportunity for that conversation to the tenants. And I really feel that if we don't pass this, and we may miss that opportunity to protect the tenants, and I really feel council needs to get behind this. This is what members of our community have been asking us for. So I'm in full support. So I'm going to ask if there's any other comments on the motion that's on the table. And if there is no more comments, I will call a question. So any further comments? Councillor Orlando, you have another comment before I call a question?
Yeah. Again, I just want to reiterate, I'm in support of getting a policy like this in place, but we just have outstanding questions, and I think they're really serious ones. If there could be unintended consequences down the road, and at the end of the day, council is responsible for that. And I can't make this decision on incomplete information. I can't tell people right now, and I don't know anybody who can, that they would be able to, in the event of this redevelopment prompted by the introduction of this policy, be able to stay in their place, get a mortgage. I just don't have that information. I've tried to get it and get it included in the report, but until then, I just can't support it. Full support of protection policies, but I'm not in support of something that I think potentially could have unintended consequences that would ultimately lead to people not being able to stay in their homes.
Great. Your comments are noted. Any further comments from other councils? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Note, Councillor Orlando is opposed. Balance of council is in favor. This motion has been passed. Now we want to go back to rescinding the other policies. Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, so I move that council policy DS10, DS15, and DS16 be rescinded.
Seconder for the motion, Councillor Devlin. Any further discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Note, Councillor Orlando is opposed. Balance of council is in favor. those policies have been rescinded and the other policy has been put in place. Thank you, Mr. Simon. Thank you, council, for your time. All right, moving on to item 12, correspondence, UBCM appointments. So we originally had come up with some meetings for council and UBCM ministers. So we've done that. So some of the meeting requests and our executive assistant, Ms. Delaselle, sent out what I've been asking for in a very vague form intentionally, because some of it can get fairly detailed. But I just wanted to ask if council have comments or questions. Some of you did say something in an email, but is there any meetings that you think we should see, or any definitive comments that you want to make on some of those meeting requests? Councilor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Souls. I didn't reply to the email itself. I'd just like to make a few comments regarding ministry meetings at UBCM from my perspective.
Sure.
And that perspective is based on my experience at UBCM last year, and also my experience at UBCM and working with elected officials over a fairly lengthy period of time. So in general, there's the ministry meetings are fairly problematic at UBCM for a number of reasons. One, they compete with a very, very busy week. It's a very packed week. So they whenever there's a ministry meeting, it's inevitable it's going to be a conflict with other sessions. And there's going to be a decision that individual councillors attending will have to make as to, okay, what do I miss? A session that's important, or go to this ministry meeting.
Right.
Sometimes it can be even to the point where we have a paid lunch. I've seen this paid lunch that everybody's paid, the taxpayers paid fairly generously, and we all miss that lunch in order to miss a ministry meeting. So that's one thing. So. And where I'm leading to is, a consideration of minimizing the number of ministry meetings. The second thing that I've noticed over the years is that in the bulk of ministry meetings by councils, individual communities, and I'm not saying Revelstoke specifically, but generally, the bulk of them is, to be really blunt, is viewed by ministry staff and the minister as whiny sessions. It's asking for money, asking for stuff. There's disorganized, and so that's another thing. The other item is the ministries, because they are flat out doing these meetings with 160 communities plus all regional districts in various areas. They get fatigued, and it just becomes a big blur in that. There can be a time, and there is times when ministry meetings can be very, very effective. And those occur when there's been lots of work done in the background between city staff and ministry staff working towards a solution to a problem. And those ones, when they're effectively done, quite often there's an announcement by the minister or a check presented, because all the work is already done, and there's some synergies there. That's just some comments. And then finally, on the policy sessions, and this does go back to last year, is if we're having discussions on policy, that really should be done by all the council in advance. It's those attending UBCM don't have some special privilege, shouldn't be driving policy items. And I think it's really important for us to have that dialogue in advance. So just with all that, I think the requests have come out, but I think having a deeper understanding of what policies, what we're going to actually talk about, and what do we hope to achieve, and how does that align with our strategic priorities. Thank you, Mary Souls.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Palmer, and I appreciate those comments. I think we've got a bit of timeline with the ministry staff meetings. Ministers, I believe we have to have that information in requesting prior to the end of the week or the end of the month. And I'll confirm. Any other comments from the councilors regarding those meetings? Councilor Lennon.
Your Worship, just for a point of clarity, staff circulated an email mentioning staff meetings. So this is something we're just meeting with ministry staff on those, not the minister.
Yeah, there's one or two, I think, minister. Other than that, sometimes you and Councilor Palmer will recall sometimes when you meet with them, well, you get 15 minutes and they come with their entourage. And as Councilor Palmer has indicated, sometimes they believe it's just a whining session. And so, I firmly believe unless we go in with a set agenda on something to discuss something specific and have that conversation before, whether that be by email or whatever, then it may not be beneficial to either council or to the minister.
Your Worship, so a question, how are we going to make a decision on which minister meetings we're requesting and which staff meetings we're requesting? And just to present my general philosophy and to give some background for councilors who haven't been to UBCM yet, this is a key opportunity, I feel, at these meetings, is lobbying opportunities when they sit down things. So, for example, I went with former Mayor McKee and Council Brothers to meet in 2017, 2018 with the housing minister at the time to advocate for involvement and direct investment in the community. And that resulted in a lot more action, including Columbia Gardens, River's Edge, and eventually a bit later BC Housing announcing their Downey Street project. So I think these are really, really important meetings. My feeling is to whittle it down and be focused is my thought on the meetings, and really just in the same sense as we sit in this council chair and somebody approaches us and has a problem, it's way easier if you have a solution. So like approaching them with a solution type thing. So my question is, are we looking to actually hash out which meetings we're going to be seeking?
So we've asked for Minister of Municipal Affairs, Minister Kang. So only one minister so far at any rate. And then basically want to talk a little bit about housing with them and see where we go with that.
So the meetings with the ministers, the deadline is Friday.
Right.
Meetings with staff is not until August 30th. So
Yes.
you've got some time to play with those, but we really need to nail down any minister requests.
Yeah, so any comments regarding Minister Kang? Some of you met her when she came to town, and we had just a basic overview of what she's doing and what she's willing to work with. Some of that was education-based as well. Councillor Khan?
Yeah, I'm supportive of the meeting with Minister Kang on the assumption, because this is on the wastewater funding, and so it's on the assumption that there's dialogue happening already.
Yes.
Hopefully an announcement by the minister at that meeting. Recognize one of the things to recognize with municipal affairs that has always been a revolving door ministry. The minister only lasts 1 year, and then they just revolve through. And it doesn't matter what party; it's just the way it's always been, I believe. Would you?
Oh yeah, it's a junior ministry, if you will.
Yeah. Gives them exposure to 20 communities. On the other ones, we have time, and I guess really what I would like to see is staff saying, okay, is there something really useful? Because for example, the illicit logjam, we did that last year. Is anything changing? Because if there's nothing substantive, it's worse than a waste of my time. It's taking me from other events to go and do that. So if there's something substantive that's coming through from last year, and so I would just suggest that we refer all these to staff and to make sure that there is something useful
Yeah, and so I agree. I think we should talk to staff about that, but, with the logjam, there may be some funding availability with that, so that's why I want to bring it up again. And there's no sense if we know there's not going to be anything. We've been told that before, but new things have come up with some of those things. So once we nail down exactly what we can talk about and what I mean by that, what's available for this logjam, if there's funding, then let's talk to that and let's see if we can apply for that to assist us with that. Comment?
Yeah, so, to Councillor Randall's point and to Councillor Palmer, we want to come to the table with a solution. So this year, vis-a-vis the logjam, we're asking the provincial government to file an application with the municipality, the city of Revelstoke, to the federal government for disaster mitigation funding. We're part and parcel, and go to the feds and ask for some assistance. So that's specific to that topic. We're actually coming to the table because nothing has happened. So rather than just going and repeat that they need to take ownership of this and do something, we're actually going to offer a solution. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments regarding the UBCM appointments? Councillor Orlando.
Your worship, I would, my preference would, I see on our preliminary list, we have a couple of Ministry of Housing related requests. I would like to up our delegation to request a ministerial meeting on housing. We have several things we would like to advocate for, including a start time for the Downey Street project, as well as I feel strongly that it's a great opportunity to show all the great work we've been doing. We've made so much progress in the past 9 months on housing, and I think it's really an opportunity to sit down and make those requests, and also point out that Ministry of Housing involvement in this community is going to engender success, positive results, actual starts on construction, and that there's just a really strong team here waiting and willing to work on everything that the housing minister is working for, and just have a lot of success. And I would just really like to have that meeting.
All right, good. Let's see if we can put that meeting together then with the Minister of Housing. All right, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Lano?
I have one more request for a staff meeting, and that is for Energy Ministry. As you know, we successfully passed a resolution almost unanimously at the SILGA convention requesting essentially the ministry act on fuel prices in Revelstoke. We expressing concern about paying more than everywhere else, and we are encouraging the ministry to make a determination after its ongoing fuel pricing study, which has been ongoing since 2019. So I'd like to see a staff meeting with that ministry for an update on what the government is doing.
All right, well, let's see if we can get that as well. Thank you. All right, if no other comments, we will move on to communications. Mr. Parliament, strategic priorities chart.
Just quickly to note, we're going to be taking off a couple of items this week with the big event planned next Tuesday. So the RCMP musical ride, and also my focus lately, and that's a further discussion, has been RCEC and a plan to move forward. That's been taking up a lot of my time. And also my last item under CAO box there, I am concluding my final lunch series with union staff this Thursday. I embarked on it on June 3rd, so I've met with all the union staff through all the different departments, and so this Thursday we'll conclude that and continue, of course, with working with the union staff and exempt staff, focusing on, and you're going to hear me say a lot of it, this council is committed to being an employer of choice, working on morale, working on corporate culture, and advising all staff that the council is committed to being the employer of choice as we go into negotiations with CUPE. We've had some good discussions with CUPE, and especially lately with the communication officer position being finally posted. So That's just a quick little update.
Great, appreciate it. Any comments for Mr. Promen? Seeing none, I will move on to Public Infrastructure Committee minutes. Councillor Palmer, any comment on the item?
Our last meeting was basically an update on the many projects the director has undergoing, and there's, I think people are aware that there's roads being torn up, and they're going to be all better once we're finished the summer here. So I think maybe one of the things that's noteworthy is on the paving. Mr. Black can correct me, but probably aren't going to see that until later in the year. It's frustrating, but there may be little gravel sections that we have to ride our bikes over in a bumpy fashion through the summer.
Or as the kids say, we can't skateboard. Right? Yeah. All right, Mr. Black, any comment on blacktopping our roads?
Thank you, Your Worship. I understand that most of the paving will be done near the end of July, so we've got 4 weeks or so. Most of the holes in the ground should be complete at that time. Likely some other projects will be beginning. The Nickel Road muck from the roundabout down to Park is almost complete and almost ready to be open to the public. And the First Street
Oh yeah, that's
project, based upon the TMP, the Infrastructure Committee, we decided to extend the 4th Street traffic calming project for next year to ensure that we had adequate public consultation and input into that project prior to completion of it in 2024.
Great, appreciate that. Councillor Cherry, did you have your hand up a while ago?
Apologies, Your Worship, no comment.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to community.
Yeah, just on that last point regarding the 4th Street calming, there was a resolution from the committee going to council that extending the 4th Street traffic calming project parameters to include the transportation master plan recommendations be considered by council. So we're recommending that that be formalized. And what that does is it's expanding the project, so it will take a little bit longer, so that we're not basically doing one project and then undoing it as the recommendations from the transportation master plan. So that was a recommendation coming from staff, and the committee is putting that. So I'd like to put that motion on the table, if I may, that the 4th Street traffic calming project parameters be extended to include the transportation master plan recommendations.
All right, seconder for that motion, Councillor Devlin. Any further discussion? You want to speak any further on that?
Yeah, I'll speak to it because it does extend the time on the traffic calming. That's been a very, very important thing. And so that was originally slated to be completed this year, and agreed, again, Mr. Black, correct me when I go off, but by making sure that we address the master transportation plan considerations, it's going to be dealing with basically the cycling paths as it applies to the traffic calming,
right,
and making sure that we implement those recommendations that's already been approved by council in the master transportation plan. So the completion would be in 2024 instead of 2023.
Sure. Any other comments or questions on that motion? Councillor Lemon.
Just for clarity, it's just extending the deadline. Is that it, or I'm not quite understanding?
It's
Or extending the time?
It is extending the timeline to include these other components of the master transportation, because it was isolated the way it was before.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what's happening.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No. Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you to Councillor Cherry and Stephenhurst online as well. I am seeing your hands go up, so thank you. Moving on to Revelstoke Area Economic Development Commission meeting minutes. So Councillor Orlando and Mr. Attia are in the room. Councillor Orlando, any comments?
Your worship, I'm just going to do a quick rundown. Again, like as is my practice to update people who may be watching. Lots of great stuff for the Economic Development Commission, a joint commission with the CSRD. And I would like to thank everyone who sits on it. We got quite a few things on the go. One is through poverty reduction, we're putting a new focus on child care. So we're trying to be results oriented by doing some work on seeing what we can do to increase spaces, look at best practices in other communities, and just build on a lot of great work that so many stakeholders are involved in. We're approaching it from an economic development lens, and if you don't have affordable childcare, it means for a lot of people, that means you can't work. So we actually have, I understand, put someone in place, and they're working on that right now. So thank you, everyone involved. A few other things, community workforce response grant we're working on. There was a review of the CMI Columbia Mountains Institute conference, which was a pretty big gathering of about 140 people, and we had an after event as well. Just great work. And then other things I would like to just highlight quickly: data dashboard. There's some expansion and work on that project. And then we're also, the Economic Development Commission is looped into what's happening on the housing front, including staff involvement in initiatives such as the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is a major opportunity for the city to bring in funding for new housing projects. That CMHC program opens in the summer and closes in the summer, so we need to get that application in. And we're, I know Mr. Attia, who's in the room here today, is working on it. And again, yesterday we had a meeting of about 20 stakeholders from across sectors: social, construction, legal, a whole bunch of people. Just sort of an informal session hosted by not really anyone, just a get together, and we're going to be working with this big collaborative effort to put our best application forward. One of the requirements is a bit of development work to make that application as best as it can be. Fortunately, the city last year completed its housing action plan, so that's the basic framework for a lot of the application. We just need to fill in some of the blanks that are raised by this very specific application that will, I think, lead to a lot of near-term development of new housing units of all kinds, including affordable, although it's not specifically restricted to affordable housing. And other than that, that's a quick update. And I don't know if staff want to have anything further to add, but I would like to extend that invitation.
Great. Mr. Attia, any comments?
Thanks.
All right. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, thank you, Councillor Orlando. Appreciate that. Moving on to item 14, questions from the press. Mr. Rousseau, any questions?
No questions, Your Worship.
All right, thank you. So, council would like to move in camera pursuant to section 90.1 D and K of the community charter. Someone want to make that motion for me? Councillor Rousseau, Councillor Orlando, all in favor? Motion's carried.